Hey guys, today I'm super excited to show you how to build mechs in Tears of the Kingdom. Once you learn the basics, you can customize your battle mech however you want. I've been holding off on making this tutorial because I wanted to make sure I could show you guys the best method of how to make these. I finally learned how to make reliable mechs using the stake nudging glitch, which I'll show you how to do today, as well as the method that doesn't require glitches. I'd like to shout out the players The Janeway Effect, who's kind of pioneered the way in mech builds in TOTK, and led to a lot of the discoveries that I'm going to be showing off today. And I'd like to thank the YouTuber MintyFN, who was kind enough to answer a lot of my questions about stake nudging and mech building. Now, you might be wondering how practical mechs actually are in this game compared to just like a battle vehicle, and the answer is they're not the most practical. They can definitely get stuck and controlling them can be a bit wonky. But I have to say they're an absolute blast. Both to make and to control. They just cause absolute havoc. And I think you guys will have a lot of fun with this. I'm even going to show you how to make these two different variations of the mech, so that you can get started with whichever one that you like the most. And of course you can switch out the Zonai weapons you see me using here with whatever weapons you like. And the best part is these mechs function both in pilot and autopilot mode. There's just a couple of special parts that we'll need before we get started on the build. We can find the first one by heading over to the Wa'o shrine over here in Hebra. Here we'll find these large bowls that we can fuse to either a weapon or a shield. We're going to need 2 of these for the mech's pelvis, so fuse one to either a weapon or a shield and then wait around for a few seconds and another one will spawn for you to fuse as well. For the only other special item we'll need, we're going to head over to the Gemimik shrine, which is on the swirly islands right outside of Terrytown. Here we can find a motor which will also fuse to a shield or a weapon. After we've got those, we can take them over to Terrytown. If you're like me and find yourself here a lot, you can leave a travel medallion there, or you can teleport to the Rasatakwak shrine and fly over. Once you make it to the Break It Apart shop, I recommend saving before you have Pelison break your things apart. That way, if something goes wrong later and you accidentally lose your special parts, you can always reload this save. For the cost of 20 rupees, you can safely separate any of the items that you have fused together. So in this case, we're going to unfuse the motor and the 2 shrine bowls that we got. You can just set them off to the side until you have all 3 of them together. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to use the stake nudging glitch to create the mech's pelvis. Don't worry, it's really easy to learn and it will just take a bit of patience to complete. Okay, so you'll set one bowl down on its face and then the other one should fuse right in the center. If you hold them a bit of a distance apart, they'll naturally want to fuse to each other's center. The shape of it should look like one of those fancy yo-yos. Once you have it fused correctly, you can put it on its side like this. Then you'll want to pull out 2 stakes from your inventory that will fuse to the sides of each of these bowls. I like rotating the stakes so that the flat sides will be up against the edge of the bowls. So just fuse one to each bowl and they should be sticking into the ground like this. This is the setup for the glitch. Now if you look in your auto build history, you'll see that this is the first thing we have saved here, and we can auto build it like this. Auto build remembers the position of each object saved, but what it doesn't remember is the tension of the fuse glue. So this is where the trick of stake nudging comes in. We want to take one of the stakes and gently shake it off, then move Link slightly to the right so that there's a small gap, and you'll see that it kind of pulls the bowl towards it when we fuse again. After doing this nudge, we'll auto build the first thing we have in our history all over again. The bowls will be slightly farther apart, but the tension between them will no longer exist. And then we'll just repeat the steps all over again. Break the fuse of one of the stakes, pull it slightly apart from the bowls, and then fuse again. Then build the brand new auto build history. For the sake of the video, I'm going to speed up this process. But basically what our goal is here is to create a large enough gap between the 2 bowls that the motor can just barely fit between them when it's on its side. The one thing you do need to be careful of during this process is that one of the bowls doesn't start curving to either the right or the left. You can check this by looking at it from above. And if you do see it start curving to one direction, try to start nudging it from the opposite side to correct it. You still want the bowls to be lined up straight by the time you're done, but just with a large gap between them. This process can take around 20 minutes to complete, so you do have to have some patience. As you'll see with my example, I actually did not do a very good job at correcting the curve. So don't be like me and actually take the time to keep them as straight as possible. Once you think the gap is large enough, see if your motor will fit between them sideways like this. The tip of the motor should fuse to the center of the bowl on the right side. If it's not centered, just shake it off and refuse. Once you have the pelvis complete, you can shake off the stakes, and we're going to take it down to the construction site below. Just remember not to hit the rail cart with a heavy weapon or a fire weapon, because it will destroy it and despawn all of your stuff. A lot of the materials that we'll need to build the mech can be found down here for free. This is everything that we'll need to build the first version of the mech. 2 big wheels, 3 stabilizers, our shrine bowl and motor pelvis, 2 construct heads, 1 steering stick, 2 cannons, 4 beam emitters, 2 sleds, and 2 carts. The first thing we'll want to do is grab our pelvis and put it into a position that's easy to work with. Then we'll take our 2 big wheels and attach them to the edges of the shrine bowls. The large wheels will act as the hips, and it's very important that you attach them to opposite sides of each shrine bowl. You'll also want to make sure that the tread of the tires is facing in the same direction on both sides. When you're thinking about the orientation of your mech, it's actually going to walk in the opposite direction as whichever way the tread of your tires are pointing. That can be a bit confusing, so make sure you keep it in mind. Next, we're going to place our center stabilizer, which will act as the core of our mech. You'll want to place it on the top of the motor and make sure that it's facing in the opposite direction as the tread of your tires so that you don't get confused. You might want to place it a little bit to the right side, since that will be the closest to the center between the 2 shrine bowls. Now, as promised, I'll quickly show you how to do this same exact thing, but without using the stake nudging glitch. You'll turn down one of the shrine bowls, then hold a wagon wheel away, and then fuse so it'll fuse to the center, and then fuse the other bowl like this. This achieves the same rotating function that we need for our mech, but it comes with a lot of problems. For instance, the small wagon wheel can easily be destroyed, and the full weight of the mech is resting on this tiny wheel, so the fuse connection breaks frequently. I don't recommend this method, but if you can't be bothered to do the stake nudging, then it is an alternative. All the other steps in building the mech will be exactly the same. Next, we're going to grab one of these carts to start building the top part of our mech. This will go on top of the head of the stabilizer, and we want to try to center it the best that we can. So now I'm going to take the other cart and fuse it directly to the side of the first one like this. And then for kind of the front windshield of the mech, we're going to fuse the sides of these 2 sleds together. From here, we're going to take them and attach them at an angle to the front of the mech. Don't forget that the front of your mech has to be the opposite way that the tread of the tires are pointing. I'm going to try to fuse these to the front of the carts, but also get it centered. You can look at the center line and see how well it lines up with the middle stabilizer. Once you do get it aligned, you can go ahead and fuse it to the side of the carts. Next, we'll take the last 2 stabilizers and connect them to the big wheels to act as legs. You'll just want to make sure that they fuse straight on and not at a funky angle, because sometimes the wheel will make you want to fuse at a strange angle. These will also keep the wheels from rotating, and will instead transfer the momentum to the bowls, which will allow it to walk. Now we're on to the fun part of making the weaponized arms. What I like to do is take one of the cannons, and then fuse a beam emitter to the top middle of that cannon. Then you can rotate it sideways, and then fuse another beam emitter to the bottom middle of the cannon. That way all the weapons are focused in the same direction, which will make it a lot easier for the construct heads to point at enemies. And a nice little trick to save you some time is once you have one set of these made, you can move it off to the side and use auto build and build your most recent history to create the other one the exact same way very quickly. Just a nice little way on a lot of different builds to keep you from having to build a lot of the stuff twice. Then we're going to want to take the cannon and attach the cannon itself to the eyeball of the construct head. But we'll want to keep the weapons sideways and perpendicular to the construct head like this. Once you've got it all fused together, you can grab it by the construct head and we're going to fuse it to the very end of one of the sleds. And it should be oriented the same exact way that the sled is. This way it'll be pointed at a downward angle and can easily pick up the movement of enemies. This is what you're looking for. It should look just like this. Now you can repeat the same process for the other side. Take the construct head over to the other side so that you can align it, and fuse the group of weapons to it horizontally with the cannon attaching directly to the eye of the construct head. Then just rotate it so it's oriented the same way as the sled before attaching it to the end of the sled. Who needs the new Armored Core game when we have Tears of the Kingdom, am I right? But we do have one last step to complete the mech, which is to attach the steering stick. I found that it's actually much better to fuse the stick at an angle rather than flat to the platform, because it will allow you to mount it even when your mech is tipped over, like this. Give it a test ride and make sure that it's working properly. But this is only one version of the mech, and I'm going to show you a different variation right now. Don't worry, the vast majority of the steps are exactly the same as the first mech. In addition, you'll just need to grab one of these mine carts with the grate on the front from Goron City. You'll build the legs of the mech the exact same way as I showed earlier in the video, but then the body of the mech will be this mine cart. Rotate it so that the bottom of the mine cart is getting attached to the middle stabilizer. One thing you do have to be mindful of is that these mine carts have a tiny little lantern on the back of them. I wouldn't recommend fusing the lantern to the stabilizer head because your mech will just be very tall and it won't have a great fuse connection. So instead I recommend fusing the top of the stabilizer right above that little lantern to the cart. But you'll want to get it aligned straight, and it looks pretty nice so far. This version of the mech is designed to look more humanoid, so we're going to use some small wheels as the shoulders of the mech. You'll want the small wheels turned upside down and at an angle, and I like to fuse them kind of between these two metal plates like this. There's no real functional purpose to these small wheels, but they do make it look really cool. I'll fuse this other wheel to the same place on the opposite side. And if you look at it, they should be aligned straight like this. Then you can create the weaponized arms the exact same way I showed earlier on in the video. And I'm just going to connect the construct heads directly to kind of the face of the small wheels. It'll be at an angle. But the important part is that the weapons should be pointed outwards, facing forwards on the mech. Just make sure you're attaching it to the face of the outside of the wheel and not to the small wheel itself, or else it will break off instantly. Now I'm going to take the other one and attach it to the small wheel on the other side the exact same way. Our humanoid battle mech is now looking absolutely fantastic, but we still need to attach the steering stick to complete it. So with Ultra Hand you can grab the mine cart, the body of the mech, and tilt it upwards until it kind of flops down on its front like this. I'm going to bring the steering stick over here and kind of get it oriented correctly, but instead of fusing it flat to the bottom of the mech, I'm also going to fuse this one at an angle as well, which will make it much easier to mount, so that you don't have to do this awkward thing every time you want to pilot the mech. So what are the pros and cons of the humanoid mech versus the robotic mech? I think that the humanoid mech has a little bit better center of gravity, which makes it walk a bit more smoothly. It also seems to be better at going uphill than the robotic mech, although neither of them are very good at this. The robotic mech, on the other hand, is a bit more fast and easy to mount, and seems to offer Link a bit more protection from getting blown up by the mech's own explosions. Like I said at the beginning, they each have their own problems, but they're a ton of fun and allow you to engage in combat in an entirely new way. If you found this video entertaining or I was able to teach you something new, leaving a like would help me out so much. I make Tears of the Kingdom build tutorials all the time, and the best way that you can make sure that you don't miss them is to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. In a future tutorial, I'm going to go over how to build the fastest speed vehicles in the game, so you're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and enjoy your brand new combat mechs.